Okay, so first I want to say hello. My name is Kaylin Burns. I'm a product management consultant, speaker, and educator. I'm a huge fan of women in product and the incredible events that they put together. So it's my pleasure to be moderating for you all today and to be able to introduce our speaker to you, Radhika Dutt. So as you guys all know, she's the author of Radical Product Thinking, which we were also lucky to get a copy of before this workshop. Radhika has built products in a wide range of industries, including broadcast, media and entertainment, telecom, advertising technology, government, consumer apps, robotics, and even wine. She advises organizations from high-tech startups to government agencies on building radical products that create a fundamental change. And today, she's going to take us on a deep dive of how to apply radical product thinking to vision and prioritization, elements that you can apply right away. I can personally attest to how transformative and readily applicable this framework is, and I'm super excited to be here with you all and to learn from her directly.
Thank you so much, Kaylin. And I'm really excited to be here. A lot of what I want to share today is, stuff that I wish people had shared with me or mentored me on when I was earlier in my career, but then also things that I've learned the hard way later in my career in terms of, product leadership, right? So a lot of these tools that you're going to see today are specifically designed so that we can really level up as product leaders. We're going to speak really openly and I'm going to address like real issues that I see in the industry, including things like, the fact that it's hard to be heard as women, and especially if we're women and minorities, people of color, etc. So what I'd like to start with, and in terms of the agenda that we have today, let me put us in slideshow mode. Hopefully you can see this in slideshow mode now. I'll go through the agenda. Again, this is going to be super interactive and really informal. This is why we kept it to a relatively small group today. So if you have questions, please do share it in the chat. If I'm going through the presentation while I'm in this in this full screen mode, I can't see questions. But, Kaylin and I were agreed that, as I go through this, if there are questions, please, Kaylin, feel free to stop me and we can talk through some of those as I go through the presentation. So the first thing we'll start with is talking about, kind of the shortcomings of how we build products today, and specifically how that affects women and what it means, for us in terms of being able to level up in terms of being product leaders. Then I want to talk through how we can apply these radical product thinking ideas, and then we'll actually put these skills in action. The most important part for me is not just hearing how you can use this, but really applying these skills. So we'll do workshopping of this, and you'll be getting live feedback from me on your vision, on how you communicate priorities. But then we'll also do breakout sessions so that, you can give each other feedback. Why? Because what is important is not just for me to give you feedback, but as your team works on a vision, for example, you'll need to be able to give them feedback on what is a good vision or not, or you need to be able to push them further. So that's why we're going to do breakout sessions so you can give each other feedback. So that's our agenda for today. And so with that, let me get started. So let's start with just, what are some of the shortcomings in terms of how we build products today? When I think about the mantras for how we build products, the main thing that's emphasized is we have to iterate quickly. We keep hearing the words, we have to maybe move fast, break things, fail fast, learn fast. This focus on iteration has built this mindset that if we just iterate quickly, take this approach of build, test, learn, that's how you build great products, right? And what the key quote that I keep hearing in companies is, oh, we just have to iterate until we find product market fit. What we've heard is, we have to find this nirvana of customer delight. And to get to this nirvana of customer delight, we have to keep iterating and pivoting until we get there. So that's kind of the mindset that has come out of Silicon Valley, but has really pervaded the tech industry, but not just the tech industry, really that has pervaded product management in general, or how we build products around the world. And I want to take a moment to call bullshit on this, that really iterating and pivoting is not what is going to get us to great products. And the example that I want to give you is a very real example of a company that was doing all the right things on paper, right? Being agile and working to delight customers. And I want to explain why that did not guarantee a successful product. So this company was a startup called Knack. And Paul was the founder of this startup. And when Paul came to me, he was sharing his numbers, and his numbers looked fantastic. So he had a high number of daily users. Like, these were ardent users who would spend long times on the app. He had high NPS scores, and he even had organic growth, which, is truly the nirvana for us product people, right? Like, if you're seeing organic growth in your consumers. But yet there was this one issue with his product. Let me first describe what the product was. So he was inspired by the suspended coffee movement, where, if you're familiar with the suspended coffee movement, it started in Naples in Italy about 100 years ago, where you pay for 2 coffees, one of which you consume, the second is paid forward for someone who could use a random act of kindness. So he was inspired by the suspended coffee movement, and what he did was he built an app so that you can buy a coffee as a random act of coffee for someone who could use this act of kindness, right? And so this app, all of these numbers were looking great, except for one number, which was that everyone was using this app to get free coffee. No one was actually using this app to buy someone else a coffee. And so what had happened really was that his product had caught a bunch of what I call product diseases. And these diseases are so easy to catch. I've seen these diseases regardless of which industry I've worked in or size of company, right? And so here are diseases I'll describe at Knack, and you can see if you recognize some of these diseases. And you can share this in chat, because really there's solidarity in talking about these diseases, and that you've experienced them, because it's important to talk about these diseases at our company so that it's clear, why do we even need a radical approach? Like, why do we need to do anything differently? So let's start by talking openly about these diseases. So the first one is obsessive sales disorder, right? So you've read this in the book. The way this appeared at Knack was, Paul was really focused on delighting his customers, right? And he was doing everything he could to delight customers, obsessively so. He was even spending his own money to fund these free coffees in the app. But all his users wanted was just more free coffee. So in the end, even if you do things to delight customers in the short term, without that long-term focus, sometimes it turns out you're not delighting customers. So even if he was putting his own money into delighting these customers, it didn't necessarily make users happy in the longer term, and it wasn't making him a better product. Right? You might see obsessive sales disorder at your company in the form of trying to make customers happy obsessively by giving them whatever features they're asking for, or whatever custom features, or a different pricing plan for each customer. So feel free to share, by the way, again, if you've seen these diseases, right? This next one is hypermetricemia. So this disease is where, especially in this analytics-driven, data-driven approach that we've learned is so important, it's so easy to get obsessed with metrics and moving metrics up and to the right. And that was the case at Knack, right? They were looking at all these different metrics, except the one metric that actually mattered, which was how many people are buying someone else coffee. And so that's hypermetricemia, when we're obsessed with metrics, but not necessarily thinking about, is this even the right metric to be measuring in the first place? Okay, and then this one more disease was narcissist complex. And you've seen the other diseases in the book, but the example of narcissist complex at Knack was, Paul felt like, if he just had this feature to be able to pay for someone else's coffee, he would use this feature. And so he spent a lot of time implementing the payment functionality in the app, but nobody was using this payment functionality, right? And that was narcissist complex. When we design things based on looking inwards and thinking, if I had this feature, I would use it. But that's not what his users needed. That wasn't getting them to actually buy someone a coffee. And so narcissist complex at your company might be, again, focusing inwards on our own goals, like on our own KPI or OKRs. And sometimes it's to a point where we get disconnected with our users. And it might also be, building features based on what we think works without really looking at what customers need, right? Okay, and so a lot of these diseases, they happen when we're working on iterating without this clarity of vision and strategy. And the analogy I like to give is, when we are using lean and agile, the reason those are not the ultimate solutions is because having lean and agile is great, but it's like having a fast car. So fast car, it drives you to your destination faster. It helps you get there faster, but it doesn't tell you where to go, right? And so you might say, well, in that case, that's where we need customer feedback. So customer feedback, the analogy I like to give is, it's like sitting in your fast car and stopping to ask for directions on the way. But when we step back for a moment, the reality is, before we get inside our fast car and start driving, or before we stop and ask for directions, we're in the driver's seat and we have to know where we want to go and how we're going to get there roughly. It's only then that the fast car and asking for directions is useful. And so the one visual that I use is to say that, lean and agile, they give us speed, where speed can look like chaos and it can look like this, right? And what we need is not just speed, but we want speed plus direction. And so this is where, if we think about all of the people in our organization, we need to see them aligned like this, right? And it's when we see them aligned that's what gives us forward velocity. There's one other problem where, when I talk about speed looking like this, where we have a culture of speed without direction, this is especially a difficult culture to be heard as a woman or a minority. Why? Because in a culture where, we're all moving in different directions, right? And that direction is not explicitly clear. What happens is the loudest voice in the room is what wins. And as women and minorities, you get dinged for either being too assertive because you know what is the right path and you're really pushing everyone to go in the right direction. So you either get dinged for being too assertive or you get dinged for not being assertive enough. It's typically like this no-win situation, right? And the other problem is there are studies that have shown that there's something called the racial attention deficit. So if you're a person of color, it is it's harder to be heard. Like there's studies have shown that it just people don't like to take advice from people of color. And so I'll pause there for a moment. Are there questions?
Nope.
Okay. So what do we need to do, right? We need to, how do we overcome some of this? And I won't say that you can overcome all of it, but what are some key tips that, that we can use? And these are the things that, I wish somebody had shared with me. And a lot of that is what I've included in Radical Product Thinking. So it's a methodology for building these world-changing products. And it really is designed to give us this step-by-step and a practical approach to be able to translate a vision into action very, very systematically. So that we start with this clarity of what's the change we want to bring about, then a strategy in terms of translating that into a set of actionable steps, bringing our vision into priorities, then into execution and measurement, and then finally we can apply all of these ideas to the culture, right? The most important thing is that each of these tools, these are designed as tools that you can use for communication. Why? Because, when I was mentioning this problem of the racial attention deficit gap plus the problem of just how hard it is to be heard, right? What is really needed is this facilitative approach. A facilitative approach means that you are still in the driver's seat. You are guiding the conversation, but it is an approach that helps you invite discussion so that it doesn't seem like, you're being super aggressive and assertive, but at the same time, it's very clear that you own the agenda. Even in terms of body language, it puts you on a whiteboard. It puts you in the driver's seat, right? And the last part is that taking this approach really helps you scale your thinking and leadership, because you're not just telling people the answer and this is what I need you to do. You're really sharing your rationale for how you make decisions, and you're trying to get people to see it your way. So you're creating all this influence in this way that is society doesn't ding us for being like, oh, you're so aggressive, right? And so I found this to be super helpful. Again, this is not to say that you shouldn't be aggressive. Like, I am not trying to I want us to challenge all of those norms. But in the meanwhile, like, how can we actually take this facilitative approach so that we can drive the agenda, but we're not dinged for sounding just, sounding like we're not getting the kind of consensus that we need, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with an example of what I mean. So you've read about the vision and how do we craft a good vision. And one of the main things that I hope you got out of the book is we really have to unlearn so much of what we know about what is a good vision. Because even there, honestly, there's just so much toxic masculinity around what is a good vision. A good vision is seen as, oh, it has to be this BHAG or this big, hairy, audacious goal. And so much of that is just really not accurate, right? Because what happens is you often have a vision that sounds like this, which is contributing to human progress by empowering people to express themselves. And this is exactly the kind of vision that we are taught is a good vision. Another such example is, we have to be the leader in XYZ industry, or we're going to democratize XYZ industry. And the problem with that sort of a vision is the following. And feel free to share with me like creative, wild ideas. And for this, I can look at chat. I'm going to get out of screen sharing or slideshow mode. Like, I want us to think about interesting examples of, what are some either companies or products that would fit under this vision statement. And feel free to go wild. I'm going to give you an example. One example is my kids have a piano teacher, and she is empowering my kids to express themselves. So this could be the vision for my piano teacher's approach to teaching. I'll throw you another example, which is this can be the vision statement of a company that makes stickers. Brittany was suggesting TikTok, absolutely, Twitter, all of social media. Fashion. Monica was suggesting fashion or film, absolutely. It can also be LinkedIn. So, but here you see kind of the crux of what I'm saying. Oh, Cricut, tattoo shop. Oh my goodness, yes. I love these very creative examples, right? Even a cell phone. Okay, so the point is, anywhere from Cricut to, tattoo parlors to fashion, anything goes when you have such a broad vision statement. And therein lies the problem. This vision does not act like a filter, because what you really need for decision making is you need a vision that's detailed enough so that if you hold up a feature against this vision, you can actually ask, should I do this or not? And sometimes the answer is no, don't do it. And so that is really what you're looking for in a vision. And so what we need is a detailed vision where we are answering questions like the who, what, why, when, and how questions. So in terms of what I mean by this who, what, why, when, and how, whose world are we changing? It can't be everyone's. It's a specific group of people. We then need to say, what does their world look like today? Why does it need changing? And this, to me, is the most important question. If we don't have a clear answer to why does the status quo, why is the status quo absolutely unacceptable today, there's no reason for our product to exist. Then we can say, when will you know that you've arrived? Meaning, like, when can you say mission accomplished? And then finally, how are you going to change it for them? This is finally where you can talk about your product or your technology or service or whatever it is. This is finally, the last part is about how you're going to do it. Now, I won't go through this example, but the one thing I'll say is the reason this is a Mad Lib statement is because I don't want you to get stuck on the words. That's one thing. The second is I don't want you to fall in love with the words, so that, you know, you might write a vision statement today. 6 months from now, you might discover that the market has changed, or maybe something has changed in terms of conditions. And if you need to revise this vision, you're not in love with the words where you're unwilling to change it, right? So that's why this is a Mad Lib statement. But I'll go through an example of this in a bit. Next, I want to cover prioritization. Because what I want to work through is, how do you actually use this vision? Because this visioning exercise is not just for posterity and then you file away a nice sounding vision. We're actually going to use this vision in our everyday decision making. This prioritization approach is really how we spread our influence, right? One of the main reasons for pushback that you get is sorry, there's someone who is not on mute. Can I please ask you to mute? Okay, awesome. Thank you. Okay, let me go back to my screen. Okay, so so one of the main points of pushback that one gets when you're trying to introduce vision, strategy, etc. to the organization is, you know, yes, all of those are wonderful ideals, but like, we really need to just survive. And so, you know, prioritization is where you actually account for this problem of survival. And so the way I like to think about it is, you know, as product people, you're really playing this yin and yang balance. We're thinking about the long term and the short term. You're thinking about the long term, which is the vision, and the short term is survival. And so when you make decisions, you're intuitively finding the right balance between vision and survival. So what you need to do is, once you've defined the vision, then you need to define, what does survival mean for you? And so there are 5 main risks, right? So if you're a startup, the main risk you have is financial risk. If you're in a large organization, honestly, you have the money. Even if your product doesn't make money in the next 6 months, even a year, that's not what's going to kill your product, right? What's really going to kill your product right away is if your stakeholders decide that this product is not worth investing in, I'm going to shut it down. So stakeholder risk is your biggest risk. If you're working on hard tech, you know, stuff that's never been built before, maybe what is the biggest risk is operational or technology risk. If you're a consulting firm, you know, maybe your biggest risk is personnel risk, because, you know, those people might choose to leave you tomorrow. Or let's say you're Uber, one of your biggest risks is going to be regulatory risk, because, you know, if your business model is fundamentally different because of regulatory issues, you no longer can operate that way. So think about, what is the one biggest risk? You know, think of yourself like the gazelle. You cannot run from all possible risks. And so one of the things that, you know, is helpful for you to be able to define this is talking about a survival statement. And so, you know, Likely was a startup that I had. And so the way I would have described our survival statement was, the greatest risk to our product's existence was that we don't raise a Series A. If this happens, we won't be able to continue operating because we won't be able to make payroll. This risk will most likely come true if we're not able to show that our product is, that our recommendations for wines are leading to sales, because it was a wine-related company. Some factors that could help us mitigate this risk is optimizing for sales so that we can show our investors that our recommendations are leading to sales. So this was our survival statement, right? And the one thing you get out of this is, it was all about financial risk. And so once you think about Vision and survival, what you can start to do is plot, all of your functionality or your opportunities. Like, you can think about any decision you need to make in terms of this yin and yang, and make it very explicit for your team in terms of this X and Y axis, right? So if something is a good vision fit and it's ideal, then, if it's a good vision fit and it is good for survival, then that's ideal. But if we're always focused on ideal, right, that is not, we're not thinking long term. Sometimes you have to invest in the vision. So that's basically like if you're fixing technical debt, or if you're fixing kind of longer term issues with the product. Maybe you're refactoring code for 3 months, or doing user research. Like, that might be investing in the vision. And the opposite of that, right, is building vision debt. So think about something that's good for survival in the short term. Like, if you've built a custom feature for a customer because it's going to help you win a big deal, that's good for survival, but it may not be good for the vision. So that's building vision debt. And so how you balance across these, like, there's no right answer, but maybe you're doing more things than ideal, a few things in investing in the vision, and you're trying to avoid vision debt, but occasionally you have to take it on, right? So this is how you kind of think about how you distribute what you're doing in a particular sprint. But again, this is theory. We're going to get to practice in a bit. I want to...
We had one question, maybe related, and feel free to maybe punt it for later if we need more time. But there's a question from Megan. Would you equate vision survival to the Horizon model, where you typically see a recommended split of 60-30-10?
Let me just make sure I read the question.
Yeah, it's in the chat.
Okay, perfect. So I find that, it's hard to really say what is that right split. Is it 60-30-10, right? The reason I say this is it's hard to tell you what is the right set of numbers for your particular situation. I'll give you an example. If you're a bootstrapped startup where you rely on winning a deal and getting customers to pay for something, you might not be able to invest in the vision at all for a long time. Maybe you have to take on a lot of vision debt and build custom features just so you survive. So why is it important even to talk about investing in the vision and building vision debt if I'm not telling you clear answers that you do 60-30-10, for example? It's because the right answers are just based on what is right for your group and based on how much risk you have. The most important thing is communication, so that you're talking to your team about, how much can you afford to invest in the vision? Let's say you're in that situation of being this bootstrapped startup. You're desperate for money and you're willing to take on custom features. If you don't recognize what you're doing as building vision debt, your team just is going to think that you have no faith in the vision. We're just all over the place. We're doing whatever brings in the money. But the moment you explain why we're doing this, I recognize that we're taking vision debt. We're doing it because we're desperate for survival. But giving them some hope that this is what we're going to do to invest in the vision, that conversation in itself makes people feel like they believe in you as a leader and they're following you. And so this is why there's no right answer. It's about you sharing your rationale for what is the right decision for you and your team, and getting people to buy into that decision. Oh, and here's one more question from Hannah that I would like to answer right now, which is, should you have one single vision statement and one survival statement? Yes, for one product team. So if you have a product that is servicing, let's say, buyers and sellers, should you have two vision statements? No, because, if you have two vision statements, it's really hard for anyone to use that a set of vision statements like a filter, because then, how do you make decisions if you have multiple vision statements, right? What you need is one. Think of that line from Lord of the Rings, like one ring to rule them all. That's what you need. You need one vision to rule them all for your product team. The situation when you have different vision statements across your company is you might have a vision statement for the company, then you might cascade that vision so that each product team has derived the vision for their product from the vision for the company, but they have a much more detailed vision for their product, for example. And so that's something that we would do, so that you might have a more detailed vision and you make sure it's aligned with other teams, etc.
Can I ask a follow-up to that?
Yeah.
Thank you. So we have like a super lean product team with 3 product folk on it, and a product that serves like 4 or 5 different like persona customer types. It sounds, I just want to clarify this because it sounds like kind of what you're saying is that you would take that split along, like this is the customer base that you're serving and these are the problems you're trying to solve for them, and kind of like build a product team, not necessarily as like these are your product people, but the product team as who's working, who's doing the work, your like user experience, like whatever that cross-functional product team is, and kind of align it to these are the goals and the objectives for this particular, I guess I'm using persona, but I mean for this particular person we're solving to, or the set of problems we're trying to solve in the space that we're in. Am I interpreting that correctly?
So I want to differentiate between the vision and strategy. The strategy is where you'll work through all the details of the different personas you might be tackling, what those personas need. That level of detail you'll get to in the strategy. In the vision, you really want to think about, whose problem are you solving? Like if you can take it one level above personas, like think about if there's a way you can identify these, what is common across these personas. Like if you have internal customers and external customers, I mean, that is way too different. Like really pick kind of a group of identified users, and that is kind of who you want to think about as your vision. But I want to reserve like if I haven't answered that question yet, like I would like to do that by looking at examples and
awesome.
kind of pushing us on the examples.
Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Okay, so let me just very quickly give you an example of how this is all used and how it comes together. And then I want to move us into the breakout rooms. So let's go to Knack and the example of Knack, right? And I want to show you kind of how did we apply these ideas. So we had to first rethink our product as a mechanism for creating change. So thinking about our product as only that mechanism. What is the change? The change itself was spreading kindness and getting people to pay it forward. And the product itself was a mechanism for creating that. And it was just this app for people to create random acts of coffee. So once we thought about it in that way, then we could write a vision statement, right? And so our vision statement read as follows. Today, when people who often go to coffee shops, so note that it's not all people, it's not all coffee drinkers, it's the kind of people who go to coffee shops often. So when they want to say thank you to someone or spread kindness around them, they have to remember to engage in a random act of kindness. This is unacceptable because it results in these acts being rare, awkward, and not a habit. Like it's very awkward if you're trying to pay for someone who is a stranger, and therefore it's not a habit. We envision a world where spreading these random acts of kindness becomes a habit for people. And we're bringing about this through an app that makes it easy to create these random acts of kindness and buying someone coffee to brighten their day. So that was the vision. Then we had a strategy. I'm actually going to skip the strategy, and I would love to get to this and talk about this at the end, because it was really interesting how we kind of really turned things around with the strategy altogether. But I want to get to the vision first. So I'll give you examples of what we did in terms of the vision, fit versus survival. So financial survival was our x-axis, and spreading kindness was that vision, right? And so we started by investing in the vision. We had to throw out the whole code base and restart development. So that was investing in the vision. We then built features that were good for both. This was the ability to give 2 coffees, one that a user drinks and one that you gift. And you have to gift the other one. We then did something in vision deck. this example was, we were getting brands to sponsor free coffees so that we could allow people to have these 2 coffees. And so to get brands to engage, we would have to create some functionality for them to be able to look at, how many people are seeing their message, etc. But that was vision debt, because that was a feature for brands and it wasn't helping spread kindness, etc. But we needed to do it, and we did it. And then we added this feature to be able to take payment, but we knew people aren't going to use it in the short term. So it wasn't short-term survival that it would help with, but it was good for our vision. And then I'll talk about how we measured success. The way we measured success was the percentage of users who are using their own money to buy someone else a coffee. And so all of these popular metrics like time spent on site, NPS scores, etc., they're all important, but that's not how we were measuring success. And so how you measure success is derived from your vision and strategy. And so with that, let's talk about the exercises and what I want you to do. So what you'll see right now is you have a mural board. What you could do is you could either use the mural board to write your vision. And by the way you use that is, let me just share my screen on the other side. Give me one moment. So you can use the mural board to be able to write up your vision in there. But if you prefer, you can just enter your vision here in chat. Like most likely you've worked through the vision already. And in that case, just cut and paste your vision wherever you've worked on it, and you can put it in chat. So what I can do is, we're going to give you 5 minutes so that you can actually work through your vision and do this fill in the blank statement. So the way you can use the mural board is just pick an area that you're in. So like mark your territory, basically. You can use these Post-its on the side. So for example, let's say, I'm just gonna use this Post-it, you can see my screen. So you can mark, let's just say I'm putting in someone's name here. Feel free to reuse that one. Just mark your territory by putting your name in here. And then you can start to fill it out using Post-its. I'll give you 5 minutes. And then I can pick some examples of vision statements, and I'll give you live feedback. And then afterwards, we'll go into breakout rooms and you can give each other feedback.
All right, so I've got a timer set for us for 5 minutes, and I'll let everyone know when we're ready to rejoin.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right, we just hit our 5-minute timer.
Okay, great. I'm just going to look at a couple of vision statements here that look kind of complete. And then I can just call out some of these and we can look at them. Let's see. Anyone want to volunteer if you've filled it out already, actually?
I can.
Okay, go ahead. Can you just point me to which number it is?
Sure, number 5.
In section 1?
Yeah, section A.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, this is a tricky one, right? So this product is something we acquired.
Oh, actually, hang on. Don't tell me about the product, because one of the tests that I use is this way. I read your vision. If I understand exactly what it is, then I get it, right? Then it's a good vision. Okay. So today, when project managers or resource managers want to understand how their resources are used or how they're performing, they have to compute the resource utilization. The RM tool, this is unacceptable because we're not fully integrated. We envision a world where PMs can easily understand how resources are utilized. We're bringing this about through an assimilated experience.
Radhika, could you zoom in on this so everyone can kind of look at it on screen too?
Oh, sorry, yes. I was looking at it on my big screen. Hold on.
All good.
Okay, let's see. So there's the one, right, Rita?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so thank you. I think I understand what the product is, right? Okay, now you were telling me background that So the company was acquired recently.
Yeah, some time ago, actually, not recently. Actually, we acquired a while ago, but it was sold as a standalone product. But it's a double-digit revenue product. It's not not too shabby, but the opportunity is huge if we actually bring it into the core product experience. It was acquired because of the value that it provided. We are a project management tool, right? So, but it's not integrated into the core product. So
okay. And so your product, what you're working on as a product manager is this integration. Is that right?
That's my strategy right now to sort of, when I say integration, it's more about like, how do I, through the user journey, the user journey of the original core product, how can I help them see value of this new product we acquired through their use cases and surfacing the right moments in that product.
Okay, cool. Thank you. That's really helpful. Okay, so, I understand, like in reading your vision, I kind of understand what the product does, but here's what I'd suggest to push you a little further in your vision, right? So the first thing is when you talk about today when they want to, and this understand how their resources are used or performing, I would push you to say, well, why do they want to understand? Like, what are they trying to do? So that would be the first thing. And then today they do this by computing resource utilization. So I understand that, I guess that's manual work, but I don't fully understand why it's not why this is unacceptable. So for example, it says today we're not fully integrated. And so my next question to you would be, well, so what? So what if we're not fully integrated? What happens then? And I would keep asking the so what until you get to a point where there's no more so what.
Got it.
And then we can say, okay, so we envision a world where PMs can easily understand. But again, this goes back to the first part. Like,
yeah.
So as a result, what happens because they've understood?
Okay.
And then the last part about this, how you're bringing about this world, it's through an assimilated experience, but you could go forth and describe a little bit more if you wanted to, in terms of, you mentioned you're trying to add that value, right? Like this is where you could talk about kind of this end-to-end journey and what you mean by this assimilated experience that you envision. What do you think?
Yeah, makes sense. I kept it high level because I wasn't sure how deep we need to go, but I get it. You wanted to help them understand.
Exactly. And the whole point is that you want your team to really understand kind of why they're doing something,
yeah.
And how will they know that they've arrived, right?
Thank you for that. Appreciate that.
Cool. Thank you for sharing, being the first to volunteer.
We have a couple more volunteers. How many more examples do you want to do before we go into our breakout section?
How about we do maybe one or two more, and then we'll go into the breakout session.
Okay. Brittany has volunteered to go next. She's number 11. Brittany, is that in section A or B?
I see, Brittany. You're number 11.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Sorry, Brittany Canty. Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thank you.
Okay, so today when Black B2C solo entrepreneurs want to start businesses and get support, they have to figure it out for themselves by Googling and making common avoidable mistakes. This is unacceptable because there are already systemic barriers making it hard for success, and the lack of access and support worsens the ability for these entrepreneurs to create generational wealth. We envision a world where these entrepreneurs have access to financial services and support to accelerate their success and build generational wealth. We're bringing this about through a digital bank and a community of other Black entrepreneurs that can learn from each other. Interesting. Okay, so I think I get what you're doing, and thank you. That, like, whenever I feel like I get it, right, it's always a very good start. Okay, some things that maybe we want to think about. One thing you might want to do is consider defining this problem of start businesses and get support, maybe in a little bit more detail. So one is the problem of fundraising, right, versus getting support. In many ways, like, getting support is easier than the fundraising. Like, if I look at the fundraising problem, like, that is so much harder than the getting support problem and having access to other entrepreneurs. Like, trying to maybe talk about what is it that you're, what is the main problem that they really have? And then I agree with the systemic barriers. And that is especially true in terms of the fundraising. Yeah, tell me more about the product itself. So it's a digital bank. Is it mostly to be able to help them have access to funding?
So like we're not focused necessarily like on fundraising or like venture-backed companies. These are, either entrepreneurs, small business owners. So it can be a wide range of people selling, shea butters to, having a beauty salon type of thing. So, but as far as access to like financial products, like sometimes just getting a business bank account is hard as shit. It could be as, going up further up into the funnel of getting, access to loans and funding eventually, or credit, and just figuring out how to manage all of those things. So yeah, there's a lot of specifics, but I tried to keep it high level enough so I wasn't going too deep.
Okay. And this is the part where you might have to do a little bit of experimentation. Try a little bit more depth and see kind of, is it too much? And find the right balance between how much you cover in your vision versus your strategy. My one suggestion is don't be afraid of getting into too much detail in your vision. Yes, you can cover a lot more detail in your strategy itself, and you will do that. But defining the problem so that it's really clear what you're solving for is super helpful.
Okay, I appreciate that.
But I love what you've written, and like at least it was great in that it really helped me understand kind of what you were doing.
Well, thank you.
Okay, should we do one more, or is this? Let's see. Should we do one more, or should we move into the breakout sessions?
We are running a little over on timing for things, but I think we can make it up in the end. So let's do one more example, because I think it's really helpful to hear your feedback on it to model the feedback that people will be giving and receiving next. So let's see, Megan Walker, she's number 24. Megan, let us know if that's in section A or B.
I believe it's an A.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Sorry, did you say it's an A?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. 24. Let's see. Here we go. Okay, so today when instructors teaching courses online on our platform want to create engaging content personalized for their students, when they have to purchase expensive third-party software, this is unacceptable because budgets are often small and using third-party software takes you out of the primary product, creating a disjointed experience. We envision a world where building engaging content is easy, fun, and rewarding. We are bringing about this world through drag-and-drop pedagogical, informed, engaging, templated elements that can be added directly to content. Cool, thank you. I really get what you're doing. Okay, so one suggestion, right, is when you define the who, like I understand that these are instructors who are coming to your platform, but I would love it if you could define kind of who these instructors are who are coming to your platform. Because how would one go about finding these particular instructors? What sets these instructors apart from other kinds of instructors? Maybe these are like the more devoted instructors who are tech savvy, or there's something that characterizes these people, right? So if you want to think about maybe who those instructors are, like how you would characterize the kind of people who come to you as opposed to go elsewhere. And this is the part where you don't have to necessarily get so detailed that it prevents you from going after other personas or expanding. Like, I'm not saying that you have to get all the way that detailed, but at least a little bit more detail so that it's an identifiable group of people.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Okay. And so today, when they want to create engaging content personalized for their students, one thing I would ask is, why are they trying to create that? Like, what is wrong with kind of what they have today? Like, when you say they purchase, sorry, go on.
I was going to say a lot of, moving courses online, a lot is they're trying to just replicate exactly what they're doing in the classroom, and that's ineffective. So you need to change the way you're teaching when you move it to online. So there's a huge emphasis on creating different content that is much more engaging in a different environment than in the classroom.
Oh, I love what you just explained. See, what you just told me added so much to the vision, right? Like in moving online, they need to think about content differently. Now I get it. Okay. And now I understand also, okay, in terms of why this is unacceptable, budgets are often small. And here I would push you in terms of like the so what. And so what if it doesn't create, so what if it creates this disjointed experience? Like one of the things that I think about when you start telling me kind of what the problem is, like what comes to mind is that what's unacceptable is the fact that it's, a lot of these instructors might not even know how to translate things to the online environment. Like, what should you do differently? Or it might be that, the experience is such that they're just not able to create this content, and in which case it's these kids who suffer.
Yeah, that's
maybe that's so what, and making it explicit would be super helpful. And then this could be related to this this thing of we envision a world where the answer to that, you can tie it back to what is it that they're trying to do. So if you're able to create this world, then they're able to create great content that engages kids online and delivers this good learning experience, or like, kind of, I'll let you think about kind of what it is, but that's the world that you envision, right? It's creating all this rewarding, easy, fun for a reason. Like, what is it that we're trying to do? And this last part, I totally get.
All right, so take it way further.
Mm-hmm. But awesome, this is great. Thank you for sharing.
Okay, so I think we should get ready to move into breakouts. And as the announcement said, you do need to be on screen here with us to be able to put into a breakout room. So you'll click that purple share video and audio. That's how you ask to come up on screen. And that's how we'll be able to put everyone into breakout groups.
Okay, great. Okay, perfect. So as long as you can hear me. Okay, so what we want to do next, now that we've defined the vision, right, I want us to get comfortable in terms of communicating our priorities, thinking about vision versus survival. So I want us to try this exercise. Like, let's think about either, if you're communicating with stakeholders or if you're communicating with your product team, how do you actually use this so that you can convince others of your priorities, and be able to have others share your understanding and rationale for why something is important, why we should or should not do something. Again, using this X and Y axis helps you take a facilitative approach. So you have a very clear point of view that you're putting out there. You're saying, I feel like we should not do this because it's vision debt, or I feel like we need to do this. It's investing in the vision. It's not something that's helpful in the short term, but we need to do this. So however, so it's important for us to be able to communicate it. It's a facilitative approach where you are stating your point of view, but you're getting others to comment on it and get buy-in. It also makes discussions a little less contentious, because what happens is when you're not in agreement with other people in the room, it's either because you're misaligned on the vision or you're misaligned on what are your incentives. I saw a question in chat earlier where people were saying, for your team, would you have the same vision and survival as another team? Your vision and survival might be slightly different from a different team's vision and survival, right? But the good thing is, when you have this X and Y axis, you should make your axes very explicit when you talk to other teams. You talk about what is your X axis and what is your Y axis, and that brings some clarity so that the discussions are less contentious, and we're focusing on kind of, given this is our vision and this is our set of incentives, how do we prioritize things? Like, where will you put things in these different quadrants? So the way I use this is, let's say I want to push back on some strategic initiatives with an executive team. I draw up this X and Y axis, and in that executive team, like we can talk about like why this big deal that we're trying to win that requires us to do 5 different custom features, why it's actually vision debt. That might be the discussion at an executive level. I use this with my product team to do sprint planning. So when I do sprint planning, I might ask every developer to have post-its, and then they'll write up the user stories on post-its, and we'll put it in the different quadrants, and we'll pick more from IDEO. We'll pick a few from investing in the vision, and we try as much as possible to avoid vision debt, but we might have to take it on. So that's kind of how we distribute it. Why don't we look at, if anyone has examples, should I give people like 2 minutes to work through it and create a couple of post-its and use the vision versus survival that there is on Mural, and just talk about maybe like 1 or 2 features that you're thinking about. And I just want you to practice using a vision and either being able to push back on a feature or like talk about a feature and how you would place it on these quadrants, right? So I'll give you 2 minutes to just work on Mural, and then maybe some people can volunteer. Just enter in chat if you want to volunteer, and you can talk about your priorities. Like just share 1 or 2 things.
Just to clarify, we are basically putting features or whatever else between the different quadrants related to each sections.
Exactly. So just write like 1 or 2 things in the post-its, and you can put it in the different quadrants. And you have the vision versus survival right there. And if anyone wants to volunteer, feel free.
Is it true that generally something is a good vision fit but worse in survival because it takes longer time, so you don't see immediate impact?
If something is a good vision fit and it's worse on survival because it takes time, then that might be investing in the vision. But that's
usually the reason why something that is good for survival would be, or sorry, something that's good vision fit would be bad for survival.
It's not always the case, right? Like sometimes if, let's say survival for you, well, what is survival for you? Like, is it financial, stakeholder, like how do you define survival?
Good question. Let's say it's financial.
Okay, are you at a big company or a startup?
We're launching a small startup.
Okay, so yes, you're right. Most probably it is survival. Survival is financial for you. Okay, so in that case, time really, it might, like if something is going to take a long time to develop, there's an opportunity cost. Like you're going to spend a lot on it. So that's probably not a good survival fit. So it's more, it's further out on the left, on the x-axis. But something might be good for vision and survival. Anyone want to volunteer their example? Well, I see you have lots of stuff, Laura. Do you want to unmute yourself, Laura? Okay, I don't want to put you on the spot. So,
Yeah, sorry, I just was having trouble joining the video again. Is it wasn't now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, awesome. So a bit of background on what I'm working on. I work at a health technology company, a wearable device, and I'm building a platform for people to self-experiment in order to find habits that better support their sleep. But at the same time, our biggest risk is stakeholder support, because there's been questions from leadership around the scalability of our product, and they really want us to build community features because those invest in growth, but don't actually do that much to help users find better habits that support their sleep. So in this quadrant, I have community sharing features, sort of the MVP version of you can join in a group and see other people's data, which doesn't necessarily do that much to help you. A feature later in that roadmap is you can do these self-experiments, but with groups that might help with adherence. So like I'm doing dry January and I invite my best friends to do it with me so that they're not going to pressure me to have alcohol, and we can all kind of do it together. Also, there's a feature in the app where we show trends of your data. So features that highlight opportunities for improvement that build off of existing things. So delivering value more quickly is going to help us reduce the chance of stakeholders pulling support, is how I'm thinking. And then in sort of the investing in the vision quadrant, I think it could be really powerful to identify habits for users without them having to do all the work of researching them. But there's a lot of ML work that goes underneath that is going to take a while to get to market and might risk some support from our leadership.
Right. And the way I use it, by the way, and I love the fact that you've labeled all of these and your explanation makes a lot of sense for me. The way I use this when I'm planning sprints or pushing back, right, is the relative positioning of something also matters. Like, for example, this community feature, you might feel like it's above vision debt, but not like, whereas this might be higher in terms of vision fit. Like, I don't mean to move all of this around, I'll put it where it was. But the way I use it is that position matters. And I use that positioning to be able to say, this is a higher priority or a lower one. And kind of, this is what we should do as a result.
And you have in those meetings, engineers are moving these around as well?
Yes, exactly. And so the discussion might look like I say, okay, I feel like this is, not a good vision fit. So I place it here. Someone might argue with me and say, well, I really feel like it belongs here. And so we agree on kind of what is the relative positioning as a team, because we talk through it. And then based on that, like what I would do at the end of what I would do at the end of the meeting is the result of all of this is here's my set of priorities. This is priority 1, 2, and so on. And it's all based on kind of where I've positioned these different things.
So does part of the engineers moving it around, are they thinking about estimates for that work and validating whether how you're thinking of, time to value is making sense?
You might have to do that, but like sometimes you don't have to get to that level of detail, right? You kind of have a sense of if survival is stakeholder support, then what is going to please stakeholders or not, right? So you kind of have a general sense of that, and then you might need to make edits to that afterwards.
Got it. And would you use it largely in the same way if you were using it as a tool to manage up and maybe mitigate some of the risks of stakeholder support?
The way I use that is not necessarily having others move stickies around, but I might go to the whiteboard and say, this is the X and Y axis. Let's say, here's the strategic initiative we are talking about. I feel like this one is more important and it fits here, and this is where it fits. Like, then invite discussion around kind of where we see things.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, thank you for sharing that. Let's see. Oh, Joanna has a question. Can you speak to experiences where senior stakeholders don't buy into vision versus survival? It's a very powerful way of communicating, but only if the audience is receptive to that being important. I absolutely agree. You kind of have to get this shared vocabulary going, right? And so find people with whom you can get the support, who get it. get others to start using this vocabulary with you, because it's such powerful vocabulary. Like once you introduce these ideas of vision debt, investing in the vision, like it tends to catch on. Get everyone to start talking in that way. So sometimes you can do it two ways, right? Like you either do this from grassroots level up, which is actually a harder path, or you can try to do this top down, like find the supporters and the kind of people that you can get buy-in and consensus from, and then you spread it from there. Nicole was asking, when you think about survival risk, are you thinking about survival of a company, a team? This really depends on your situation. If you're in a large organization, you might want to use vision for your product versus survival for your product. If you're talking at an executive level, I might talk about, company vision and survival. This really depends on kind of who you're talking to. But this is why, it's super important as you define the X and Y axis, before you put anything on the quadrants, start by defining what is your X and Y axis. That had so much clarity for people in terms of what is the vision we're talking about, what is the survival we're talking about. Like it aligns people on the vision and incentives. Then you can get to that discussion of where does this fall, right? So that's a super helpful technique. It almost starts to act like an API between teams. So when I talk to other teams, when you define the X and Y axis, you have in an instant this clarity of what are we talking about. Okay, shall we look at one more example and then I want to go to recap. And Kaylin, did you have a comment?
Yeah, no, I think that sounds good. We've got 13 minutes left, so I want to make sure we leave a couple minutes for kind of final thoughts.
Okay, cool. Anyone else want to volunteer their vision versus survival? We can talk through it.
I'm happy to offer mine only because I don't know if others are in a similar position on this call. I am a product developer in a large company, so I work for Blue Cross Blue Shield, and I'm in a unique position where, yes, we might be building in-house products, but a lot of what we do is bringing other people's products, startups, ideas from the outside, bringing them into our large corporation and delivering them to our members. So we're kind of in a unique position where we might not be building the product from scratch, but a lot of times we're going to these startups or established companies and bringing their product to our audience, or our members, I should say.
Okay, and can you point me to your vision versus survival?
Sure, I'm in section A, vision 3.
Okay.
And just for a little bit of background, what we're doing right now on my team is a big issue in the health insurance space, specifically for health insurance employers, is really the lack of benefits that support caregivers in the workplace. So we're trying to bring on a product into our employer health insurance packages that offers caregiving support options, whether they be remote patient monitoring or caregiver burnout prevention, emotional support. So for us, it's a lot of thinking of how we work with these outside products and make them a product we offer our members.
Okay, makes sense. And I think, so when I read this, right, I feel like this is at a stakeholder level conversation that you're envisioning based on kind of the level at which this is.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, yeah. And that makes a lot of sense. Looking at this, this sounds like you're staying at a thematic level. So this is about offering a caregiver product, and you're looking at that as investing in the vision. I think just some considerations. Sometimes something looks really big when it's in the investing in the vision quadrant. Like when I look at this, if I'm a stakeholder and this looks big, that looks scary, and it something that's big and scary, go immediately, just automatically goes further out in this investing in the vision quadrant, right? So if you think of ways that make this a little smaller, so let's say, instead of grouping all of this under a caregiving product, pick one area. So maybe I pick just this one of burnout, right? And solving the burnout problem. Maybe that in itself is the only thing I'm talking about. Now this is much easier, and it brings me here. So one of the things you can think about is if you have something in the investing in the vision quadrant, like, is there a way you can bring it further out to the right? And sometimes that's by making the problem a little, breaking it down into smaller problems, and that puts it further out.
Got it. That makes sense. And that is also helpful because a lot of what my product innovation team is doing is once we do the analysis, if we pick a product that we think is going to be a really great vendor or solution to bring on, it's, of course, that conversation with stakeholders, convincing our powers that be, our leadership, that this is a product to bring on, and you know, a lot of barriers that can come there.
Exactly. Cool. Thank you for sharing this example. I felt like that was a meaty one where we can get into as well. Okay, so since we have 9 minutes left, I definitely want to do a recap where, you know, I would love to hear from people if you want to volunteer and share kind of what is something that you were taking away from this that was really this aha moment that you feel like you can go and apply with your team or at your company tomorrow. So if you want to share something, feel free to share it in chat, or you know, you can we can call you up to just speak out loud. And in the meanwhile, I will answer one question from Jeanette, which is, where can we find resources on how to facilitate vision setting workshops and risk matrix workshops with our teams? So I do workshops. I mean, I haven't done the trainer kind of workshops yet, but I do organize trainings for teams. So you're welcome to reach out to me. And I'm happy to talk to you about workshops and trainings that I do for organizations. And by the way, also in terms of things that you can use the free toolkit, which is on radicalproduct.com. You know, at your company, if you end up doing a book club, I'm happy to do a Q&A for a book club if I can manage to fit it into my schedule. So you're welcome to like ask me if you're planning on doing a book club. I often find that a book club is a good way of getting people to think differently. And lastly, you can message me on LinkedIn as well if you have questions.
Thank you for answering that, because I had a couple people ask me as well. So it's great that LinkedIn is a good way to contact you, and I linked to the toolkit in the chat as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, I'll let you, yeah, Kaylin, if you want to decide how we want to do the moderation.
Okay, cool. I'm just going to call out things that people are saying, and if anyone has something that they want to add, like, feel free to chime in. But kind of just starting at the top here, really found driving into the like, so what, like really getting into a deep why helpful. The vision written this way sounds foundational. So that's definitely where Megan's going to start with her product teams. Love the Mad Lib. In my group, we were just talking about how this is just the best format any of us have really worked with when it comes to putting a vision together. A lot of the other books and resources out there are not as practical and not as easy to plug into. And so being able to work with this format has just been awesome. And Alex is saying that they have a deck and a process for developing the product line visions within the organization. So this is a great addition for her to that.
That's awesome.
Joanna says the common language is very important, and instilling that upwards as well as downwards. And the unacceptability criteria for the radical product vision is helpful as well.
Oh, on that one, you know, yeah. I see one from Elizabeth, the value in talking to people outside of our organization and problem space. Like, one of the things that you can think about as you write your vision is you treat it like a hypothesis. You can look at your vision as a hypothesis where some of these things might be answers that you're not fully sure of. And so, you know, you go and validate this. You might have to come back and change your vision. But that's the important part. The willingness to change your vision, because it's easy to do so. And then you can communicate it. You can explain to your team, like, here's what we thought it was. Here's what it turned out to be instead. And this way, it's not just, it doesn't feel like a random pivot, like you just changed your mind. Like, it's very clear for your team, and they can follow you along on this journey.
Yeah, I think that's the thing I like most about this framework, is that it does bring everyone along on the journey. And I think product management work can so often feel very opaque to people who are not familiar with the practice. And this really like includes everyone and creates that visibility and that transparency so that you can have that alignment like much, much more quickly than you would if you were not using this.
Great.
Hannah said that she workshopped the vision with her team, and they created a board where they collected assumptions so that they can look at them later and figure out what to do with them. I love that.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's such a great idea to do.
Yeah, and she said, added how risky the assumptions were to us.
I love that.
Yeah. Monica said her aha moment was reframing product priorities, not only around what's best for the product in an ideal environment, but in a fluctuating environment of competing priorities.
It's wonderful.
Awesome. Does anyone else want to share theirs verbally? Like you're welcome to jump in and share it as well as chat too.
I can share mine. I had another one, just that a lot of us realized as we were reading our problem statements that we weren't being very specific. And so tying together the problem and the solution, we're hiding behind words that just like sound good. So it was kind of a refresher of like, just be specific about what you're trying to do to really keep everybody aligned.
Oh, I love that. And thank you for sharing. That is so true. By the way, like that is one of the big reasons that we see big words in the vision, right? I always feel like, you know, that book written by Randall Munroe, I think it's called Thing Explainer. Like he uses only the 1,000 most commonly used words. Like your vision should be written so simply without hard words. You should be able to use simple words to explain what the problem is and what your solution is. And that's one of these big tests for your visions. And one more test, by the way, like one thing that I was using, as you saw today, I was reading your vision without knowing background of your company, etc., to be able to tell you if it's a good vision or not, based on whether I understand it. I like what Megan is saying, test it with your grandma or your mother for your understanding, but also test it with your customers. Like your vision should resonate with your customers. And that is a good test for whether it's a good vision or not.
Monica was adding on, survival involves not only delighting the end customer, but internal customers too, managers, leadership, business partners who hold the purse strings. You're investing in the future health and viability of your product.
That is so true. Oh, and by the way, this is one point where, you know, as the more experienced we are, the more we intuitively make those decisions where we balance and trade off between long-term and short-term. And for us, it's super intuitive because of that hard-learned experience, right? And so one of the ways you gain influence in your organization and you build your influence across the organization is getting people to make those decisions like you do. And which is why we want to make the X and the Y axis so explicit and getting people to think about those decisions. So that this way, when you're not in the room, they can think like you.
One last one here from Laura. In an organization where multiple product teams are united in missions, I guess it's a question. Would you expect that the visions differ mainly in the we're bringing this about through, like through the solution?
This is a great question. And yes, absolutely. This can absolutely be the case that, you know, just the last part differs. But within your organization, there might be some product teams that are working on internal customers. So even their who is different. And so that might be, the entire vision is different. The main thing is like having different product teams talk about their vision and like organizing sessions where different product teams can present their vision, strategy, etc. So that you can get to that level of understanding and that API basically that I was talking about between product teams, where stating this vision, your vision becomes an API where you understand at a glance what you're doing versus what's another product team doing.
Awesome. All right, so we are just about at time here. Before you go, if you all have a moment to take the survey, Women in Product would really appreciate your feedback on this. It's all the way on the right at the top of the chat on your right-hand side. Take a moment, answer that survey. I think you're also going to get to be able to do that too. Follow the link to take the survey. We really appreciate it. Radhika, thank you so much. This has been an incredible session. In my breakout, we were all just saying how wonderful it is to get to learn and hear about this from you firsthand. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad. And I've really enjoyed this session. I'm looking forward to keeping in touch with everyone. These are heartfelt tips and suggestions that I have learned from my own experience. And I'm really looking forward to seeing, how you grow in your career as well as you are able to take on this facilitative role, but able to push your agenda. Please feel free to share how you use this approach and kind of how things are going on your journey. I'd love to stay in touch. And yes, you can also reach out to me if you want to organize, a Q&A for the book club that you're doing. I don't offer this to everyone, but I would love to do this for this group. And if you have, if you're looking for workshops and trainings for your organization, please feel free to reach out to me as well. Thank you so much for Kaylin for moderating, and for Women in Product to Ayana and Rachel as well for organizing all of this.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Have a great rest of your Thursday, and hope to see you again soon at another Women in Product event.
Thank you.
Thank you.